Hey folks, let's talk about the Greensboro lunch counter at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History and the story that broke yesterday. Yesterday was not just yet another dark day. It was a reminder of the environment that we are now living in every single day, and why one of the most important resistance principles, your resistance dispatch of the day, one of the most important resistance principles that we can practice is maintaining clear, trusted communication without letting ourselves be swept away by the fog that authoritarianism is designed to create. The reports that the Smithsonian was removing the Greensboro lunch counter from the National Museum of American History, although it was originally reported as from the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the lunch counter is not there, it's at the Bearing Center, but it was still a flashpoint. I didn't post about it right away because something didn't add up. My spidey sense was tingling a little bit because I couldn't confirm it. And knowing what the implications were, if that in fact had been the case, if something as iconic and as central to the permanent collections of the Smithsonian was being actively removed, and the story even assigned a Trump actor to it. So I couldn't confirm it. I can only watch it as we see these things spread throughout digital media. The one story that originally broke it was picked up and spread, again, without verification, just with assertion and assumption. And again, the implications would have been catastrophic. If it had been true, it would have meant that the Smithsonian, still technically outside direct federal control, had been overrun. That, as we talked about when the executive order was issued a couple of weeks ago, that something extraordinary would have to happen for them to actually achieve their goals at the Smithsonian, for this regime to achieve its goals at the Smithsonian, because the entire governance structure would have to fall. The Board of Trustees, 17 members, Lonnie Bunch, the legendary secretary, the whole institution would have been compromised, like the NEH and IMLS and the National Archives already have been. So it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility. So the plausibility made everybody perk up in terms of the collapse of yet another public history pillar, maybe one of the last ones standing in the federal government. And it turns out not to have been true. And even though it was corrected later with the work of a fantastic White House correspondent, but the damage had already been done. The story is still flying around social media. Fear spreads, mistrust deepens, people feel more isolated and less sure of what could be trusted, which is exactly what this regime wants. And it might, in fact, have been intentional given the big story of the yesterday being Judge Duggan in Wisconsin and the implications of that. Well, why don't we go ahead and spread this story? But resistance history teaches us something essential here. It teaches us that information, clear, trusted information, isn't just important, it is a matter of survival, folks. Because we are in a fog of war, and that's not a metaphor. That's what authoritarian regimes create. It's a manufactured environment where disinformation, half-truths, and emotional shocks blur reality until you can't tell where you stand or who stands with you. The fog of war, when you are in the fight, is limited to what you can immediately perceive. The fog of war, when we're talking about resistance and underground movements, it's a different context and it has a different meaning, but it has the same effect. In our case, it's creating that is deliberate and it's tactical, but it's also ancient. We know how this works. And we have tools, micro-resistance tools, that come straight out of the history of successful resistance movements. That's at the heart of my book. I want to make sure you have lessons that come from real people doing real things, during admittedly extraordinary times, but it has to be relatable and accessible to you. We have to generate our lessons. And one of the most powerful is this. You got to be your own filter. Because authoritarian regimes don't just rewrite the past. They destabilize the present so thoroughly, so relentlessly, that people lose all confidence in what's real and then reach for whatever version the regime offers them. That's not accidental. That's the point. And so World War II resistance movements faced exactly this environment. The resistance across occupied Europe, Nazi information tactics weren't limited to propaganda broadcasts. They deliberately seeded false information into underground networks, fake orders, fake denunciations, false reportals of betrayal or defeat, precisely to break movements from the inside, to sow that distrust that makes people feel isolated and breaks them apart. In Poland and France and Denmark, Czechoslovakia, the pattern was the same. Flood the environment with so much disorienting information that resistance fighters didn't know who to trust or even whether it was worth fighting at all. And it worked. It worked. When resistance groups failed to discipline themselves around the truth, movements collapsed, not because their cause was wrong and not because they were incapable, but because doubt, confusion, and mistrust paralyzed them. So colleagues that I lean on, people like Abby Heffer and call me Steve, are clear about this in their analysis of fascism, whether that's the fascism coming out of World War II, whether that's authoritarianism coming out of Asia, whether that is the authoritarianism of the Cold War period in Eastern Europe. Destroying the very concept of a shared reality is a central strategy of authoritarian power. Once people no longer believe in anything or trust anyone, the regime doesn't have to win arguments. It simply asserts, it dictates. It replaces the real with what they desire. And that's where we are headed if we don't fight back on the level of information. It's not paranoia to demand verification, even from sources you usually trust. It's survival. It's not disloyalty to anybody to ask, how do you know? It's responsibility, and nobody should be offended by that. Because what the regimes of the 20th century proved, and what today's ultranationalists know, is that when information becomes a fog, people will grab onto any fixed point, even if it's a lie. Especially if it's a lie that promises safety, order, and more to the point, simplicity. This is how Fox News survives. The Nazi regime didn't just build death camps in secret. It built a psychological environment where even when evidence leaked out, and it leaked out early, people in the Warsaw Ghetto knew what was happening in 1942. When resistance fighters smuggled out reports of mass murder, people inside and outside Germany and Poland didn't know whether to believe it. It sounded too terrible to be real. It contradicted the official story. And doubt, not belief, became that regime's greatest ally. And it's going to become this regime's greatest ally. And they're working hard at it. That's the risk we're facing now. This regime, like every authoritarian movement before it, needs us confused, needs us isolated, needs us too overwhelmed to act. And that's why every act of verification, every refusal to spread unconfirmed stories, every insistence on checking, every conversation that asks, what's your source, is not just good practice, it's micro-resistance. It's a direct blow against the fog they're trying to create. And it's how we hold the line for ourselves, for each other, and for the future that still depends on people who refuse to be lied into submission before the collaborators get their hooks into them. Resistance history is full of examples of people who stayed clear-eyed and trusted their own discipline made the difference. We have those examples. We have those tools. We just have to use them. I get messages from people all the time feeling that isolation, expressing that isolation, wondering if it's just them, wondering if they're the only ones still trying to see clearly. You're not. It's real, and it's happening by design. But we have these tools. We have these micro-resistance tools that come straight out of the history of successful resistance movements. We don't have to reach into mythology. We can reach into history. So, one of the most powerful is this: be your own filter. Don't just consume. Don't just react. Verify, ask, push, even when it's hard, even when it's come from sources you trust and people you like. It's not an insult. It's not disloyalty. It's survival. Because when the fog thickens, when they come for the present, just like they have come for the past, the only thing that will anchor us is truth that we know we can trust. So don't hesitate to ask, how do you know? Where did you hear this? Has it been confirmed? What's the evidence? Those questions are not cynical. They are the discipline of a functioning resistance. Authoritarianism wins by creating isolation, confusion, and helplessness. Resistance wins by building trust and clarity and community. And the clearer thinker you are, the better a grasp you'll have on all the information that gets thrown at you. This regime doesn't just want to rewrite history. It wants to rewrite now. So you can't tell the difference. And so you end up relying on only what they tell you is real. We can't let them, and we don't have to. Every time you pause, verify, confirm, and then share, you're pushing back. You're refusing the fog. You're refusing them. You're making every step they take harder for them to hold. And that's resistance history in action. Not just the big moments, but the small ones that you have to make every single day. That's how resistance sustains itself. There are the big events, but it's actually the assenting to it of every single moment of every common day that enables you to go ahead and push through, and if not actually earn victory, but to make victory possible. Every day where you keep yourself and others grounded in your truth, you can make that your ground to stand on right now. Now, what is real and what is not, and help others to do that too. So the next time you hesitate before reposting something, good. That's resistance. The next time you ask a friend or a trusted source to verify, good. That's resistance. The next time you wait until you know before you act, good. That's resistance. Our information has to be early and it has to be accurate, or it does us no good. It has to be both of those things. If it is early and inaccurate, then we are wasting time, we are wasting resources, we're wasting energy, we might be wasting lives. If it is late and accurate, then we lose the opportunity to act when we need to. So it's how we keep the line strong. Not just against the lies of the past, although we're doing plenty of that, but against the lies being made right now, every day. Authoritarianism doesn't just lie about the past, it breaks the present, so you don't know what's real until they tell you. But we won't let that happen.